All right, so now we're going to get into the final topic in our unit, and that has to deal with the sum of the angles, or the sum of the interior angles of a triangle. Let's break that down for a second. The sum. Sum means addition. Interior angles means the angles on the inside. Here in this picture, you can see the 40 is on the inside and the 70 is on the inside, and those are numbers of degrees. And so what I would like you to know is that the interior angles will always add up to 180 degrees. And what I'm going to write here is that they sum, means add, to 180 degrees. And so if we know that fact, a question like the one that's on the screen right now gets a little bit easier. We're asked to find the number of degrees down here. Well, we already have 40 right there, and we have 70 right here, and we know that whatever number is down here with the question mark, they're going to have to add up to 180. So the process is simple. We just take 180 minus 40 minus 70, and we see what we get. Now you may want to use a calculator. If you have your phone out right now, you could use that if you're watching on a computer rather than your phone. So 180 minus 40 minus 70, what do I get? That is 70 degrees. Okay, so remember this fact up here. You need to have this in your notes. This is going to come up in almost every unit in geometry. There's a couple of really, really important ideas in geometry. This is one of them. So make sure you have that down. Okay, let's do an example. Okay, so here we've got ours. We're looking for angle 1. Pause the video if you need this, if this is going too fast and you need to draw down the picture. Okay, and here's what I'm looking for. I know that's angle 1. I see that little box. I'm going to write 90 right there to remind myself that I do know how many degrees are there. And then I know this is 125. It seems like there's not enough information because we only know the one angle inside this triangle. But believe it or not, we can find another one. So recognize that right up here, we have a linear pair. We have one single straight line. We have a line coming out of it, which means these 2 degrees, or 2 angles, excuse me, the 125 and this angle on the other side, they have to add up to 180. So real quick, I'm going to do 180 minus 125, and when I do that, I get 55 degrees. Now that I know that, I'm not going to worry about that 125 anymore. I've already used it. And so now I'm going to remember that the 3 angles in the triangle, and I'm talking about this one, and this one, I know they have to add up to 180 degrees because anytime we're in a plane, which we are here, this is a flat surface, those 3 angles are going to add up to 180. So all it is then is 180 minus 90 minus 55, and that gives us 35. So here's how I'm going to write my answer. The measure of angle 1, notice I'm matching the way the question was written. The measure of angle 1 equals 35 degrees. And now we're done. Let's try another one. So what will make this a little bit easier as you're drawing it is if you recognize that there are actually 3 triangles in the picture. Some people only see 2. There's 3. And remember, we only want to look at one triangle at a time. If you try to do all of this question all at once, it gets overwhelming and confusing. So we're going to break it down into little bitty pieces. The first one I'm going to focus on, I want to focus on this triangle. And here's the reason why. I actually know a couple angles in this triangle. I know the 70 right here. That's good. And believe it or not, we know that one too. That's 90. So if you know 2 angles in a triangle, you can always find the third. All you have to do, subtract the 2 from 180, so minus 70 minus 90, and we get 20. Now what angle did we just find? Remember, we're looking in this triangle, the one that's highlighted, so that means we just found angle B. That was 20 degrees. Okay, that wasn't too bad. So I'm going to get rid of my highlighting here. And let's come back and let's look at a different triangle. Let's look at this angle right here. Do you know how many degrees are in the angle that I just drew? I hope so. There's a 90-degree angle right here. And so we know that's 90. We already know one part of it is 70. So what would the other part have to be? Remember, they add up to 90. So this has to be 20. So C is 20. I should write down B is also 20. And now we can find A. Because if you know 2 sides of a triangle, you can find the third. And we know this is 20. What about this one? Do you know? Well, look, that's a linear pair. We have a right angle on one side, 90 degrees, which means the other side is also 90. So we've got our 20, we've got our 90, and we have A. They have to add up to 180, so it's the same calculation as before. 180 minus 20 minus 90. This time, we get 70. So I'm going to come up here, angle A equals 70. Here's the question. Find the values of A, B, and C. There they are. A, B, C. Done. Once again, we have a triangle with, or an image with multiple triangles on it. And so we're going to look at one at a time. Before I say anything else, I want you to pause the video, draw it, and figure out which triangle should we start on, because one of them is a lot easier than the other. In this case, the left triangle is going to be easier because we already have two pieces of information about it. The more information you have, the easier it is to find the next piece of information. And that's generally true in math and in geometry. So if we know these two angles and we're missing an angle, we're looking at a triangle. We know that in a triangle, the angles add up to 180. So here's our calculation. 180 minus 65 minus 39, and that gives us 76 degrees. I'm going to label that as x. So we found x. Now we have to figure out what to find next. What I'm going to look for is right here, I've got another linear pair. We call it a straight line adding up to 180. And so we just found out that's 76. We know they have to add up to 180, so all we have to do is 180 minus 76, and that is 104. Now we know what y is. And we need to find z. For a lot of people, it's easier if we actually write in 104 right there so we can see it. And now we realize in this triangle, I'm talking the triangle on the right, I'll highlight it in blue. In this triangle, we know one, two angles, and we're looking for the third. So here it goes. 180 minus 21 minus 104. Take a moment. Either do that in your head or do it handwritten or a calculator. And when I do that, I get 55 degrees. And so that's going to be my answer for Z. All right. So we've done a couple of these in a row now. I would suggest you pause the video, try this on your own, see if you can get it. Here's how it goes. In this triangle on the left, we have 30 and 40, and we realize that the three angles on the inside of the triangle have to add up to 180, which means this one right here must have been 110. I'm not showing the work this time because we've already done a couple of them, but subtract 30 and 40 from 180, you'll see it. If that's 110 and these two are on a line, they're a linear pair, they have to add up to 180. That means angle 1 is 70. There's my answer. We can double check the math. 70 plus 110 does equal 180, so that checks out. Over here on B, very, very similar. We have a linear pair, straight line, which means the two angles better add up to 180. So we have 113. Well, what's the other angle have to be? Looks like it's 67 degrees. And if that's 67 degrees, 67, we know the three angles add up to 180. So all we're going to do is 180 minus 67 minus 70, and we get that angle 2 is 43 degrees. We're going to do one more, and then that's going to conclude our video series for chapter 3. We're going to try one with some algebra in it. And so for a lot of students, this looks a little bit more intimidating. It shouldn't be, though. It's all the same concepts we've been talking about. And what we can recognize right away when we look at this is that this is a triangle. And these things in here, notice how they're written over in the corners. They're trying to tell us that those are angles. They're not sides. If they were sides, they'd be written out here in the middle somewhere. For example, there'd be an x here in the middle of the side length if they wanted us to think that it was a side length. These are angles. And what we just learned is that the three interior angles, notice all of these writings are on the inside of the triangle, we just learned that those have to add up to 180. So let's use that fact. We learned that the three angles of a triangle add up to 180. Notice how I'm setting up the structure of my equation so I can understand what this is going to look like. Now all I have to do is fill in an angle, an angle, and an angle, and here we go. What's the first angle I see? 5x plus 3. What's the next angle I see? Looks like 6x minus 15. And the third angle I see looks like maybe that would be angle x down there. Okay, and so I've got my first, second, and third angle. and I'm filling those in up here in my equation. Now it's algebra time. The geometry's done. It's just algebra from here on out. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to combine our like terms. I'm going to start looking just at the left side of the equation. I can pull a 5x plus 6x, that's a 1x. Add those together, and what do we get? 5 plus 6 plus 1, that's 12x. And we have 3 minus 15. So 3 minus 15, that would be minus 12. And then my equal sign, I've got equals 180. Let's add 12 to both sides. And what do we have? We have 12x equals 192. Oops, excuse me, I hit the wrong button. I need to now divide by 12. And I'm going to use a calculator for this one. And you're not expected to do this in your head, by the way. You can use a calculator. And I get 16 when I do that. So x equals 16. We always want to double check and see if we answered the question. So let's go up and look. Determine the value of x. Have we done that? Absolutely we have. All right, that concludes this video. Hope you enjoyed it and happy studying.